Hello everyone, this is Erin, and today I'm going to try to recreate this adorable piece of concept art made by Mary Blair for Walt Disney's Alice in Wonderland. I've got all my stuff. I've got my paintbrushes, my gouache, my water, my paper towel, my handy little book on color mixing, and the piece of concept art that I've opened in Procreate. I also have some fine liner pens, my washi tape, and I'm starting off with some deep ultramarine and then some regular ultramarine. So I want to compare the two, see which one works better for that really bright electric blue background. So I'm testing out these colors by mixing them in with white. And this is a really good idea. If you're not really sure what sort of bias a color has, whether it has like more of a green bias or a red bias, it's always good to mix it with a bit of white, and then you really get a sense of what that color is, what that pigment holds when you mix it with white. And I've decided by comparing the two, they're really close in color, but I thought I would mix them up together and then add a little bit of white to brighten it up, to heighten the value. And that's my background color, which is, I think, really close to the original piece of concept art that Mary made back in, I guess she was working on these at about 1950. And you can see that this blue is right in between warm and cool. It's like right in the middle, using that color wheel there to show you. And now we've got our black, and I'm using my flathead brush, bringing in the corners here. I'm not really worrying about the dry brush effect yet. I'm just filling in the sides to create this really dramatic vignette. I think this is such a cool way to frame a piece, and Mary does this a lot, or she did this a lot in her work, creating these vignettes to highlight what's happening, adding to the narrative, really, really creating more of a focal point and more drama. I'm testing out my dry brush on an extra piece of illustration board there. So I've dried off my brush, dabbed it, dipped it in a little bit of paint, and then did a test run, and I liked the way it looked. So now I'm just bringing in the dry brush around the edges. And I'm doing this pretty, loosely, not really too focused on getting everything perfect and right. It's just more of a feel thing and getting rid of some crumbs there. But I do find it helpful at this point. I'm going pretty loose, but I also want to make sure that it's still matching the concept art. Like where are those black dry brush textures coming in a little bit further? Because on the original piece of concept art, there's some that are a bit more pronounced than others, some that are coming into the picture plane further than others, just to give a nice variation. So I'll bring up the piece of concept art again in a second, just so we can see how well I'm lining up with that. And I'm doing a second coat of black now, and this is just giving, that black more opacity. And it's usually the case with gouache, like whether it's acrylic gouache or classic traditional gouache, you usually want to do a few coats. And I realized I needed to put some down on the bottom there because look, you can see her dress is the same blue. And so I thought I would fill that in. Now I'm picking up the color using Procreate. So I put my finger down on that chair color, and then I can see exactly where it is in the color wheel. And it's really close to sienna, raw sienna. But instead of using raw sienna, I'm going to mix some colors together from the primary set and show you how to make this color. So this raw sienna is, it reminds me sort of caramel. I'm always like comparing paint colors to food, but it has this nice warm sort of reddish yellow hue to it. You can see here, I can look on Procreate and see how much green is in there, how much red is there, how much blue is present, and I can use that. And then what I've got here is I've got white and black, because I can see from Procreate that there is both white and black in the mix. I know that it's a warm color overall, so I'm using the red and the yellow. And then I'm using a little bit of cyan to tone it all down. So cyan is more on the other side of the color wheel, a complementary, and it'll bring in a bit of depth, and it'll cool down the warmth, because we don't want it too orange, right? It's not like a bright orange, and it's not a bright red. It's more of a yellowy orange brown. So mixing brown's fun because you basically just mix all the other colors together to make brown. But this brown, or this sienna, is, has a orange bias. So I'm bringing in more yellow and red there, mixing it in. And just using a little bit of paint at a time, a little bit of water at a time to keep the mixture creamy, but to also not waste paint. Because if I dumped a bunch of paint on my yogurt lid here, potentially I'd be wasting a lot of paint trying to get the right color. What I'm doing here is I'm putting some of the color aside because I'm going to create a darker version of this color, a little bit warmer or a little bit more red, to do some of the details on the cushioned chair. But now see, I've added more yellow to that mixture and some more water, and now I've got my perfect match. Look at that, it's exactly the same. So it does take a little fiddling, but yeah, I find Procreate's really helpful to sort of just figure out exactly what hues, what colors are mixed together to make that raw sienna. And now I am blocking in the chair. Fun shape to do. And my first coat here, you can see the blue coming through very clearly, and it looks really streaky. And this is when painting with gouache, you have to trust the process because it will not continue to look like this. After I waited for that first coat to dry almost completely, I was a little impatient. I'm doing a second coat here with a bigger brush just so that it's quicker, smoother. Less strokes means less streaks. Less strokes means less streaks. It's my new tagline for something. I don't know. Anyway, and I had to wait again for it to dry to do a third coat. Now, when you first put the paint on, you can see it's darker and it dries lighter. So one of the tricky things about paint, and not just gouache, but also, latex paint, a lot of paint. I don't know if it does it with oil paint. I don't think it does, but things will dry darker or lighter depending on the pigment. And so it's nice to let things dry, check it out, and then see if you need to adjust your color. So now I'm making this sort of slightly darker, a little bit more red colors so that I can do the details in the chair. So the chair is an upholstered, sort of cushioned back chair. And so we want to make these little darker areas where the buttons would be, the black buttons in the upholstery. So making up my mixture here. Adding a little bit of black, a little bit more red, and it's starting to look about right. Get my brush nice and twisted there so it's really pointy, and then I can bring in these little details. So quickly, just talking about details, some funny things I learned about Alice in Wonderland for this video. I'm not going to give away all the facts because I'm sure I'll be doing a lot more Alice in Wonderland pieces in the future, but I did find out that Lewis Carroll, who wrote Alice in Wonderland originally, he actually suffered from migraines and had what was soon to be called the Alice in Wonderland syndrome, also known as Todd syndrome, where objects would appear to him either bigger or smaller than they actually were. And this is a syndrome that typically affects children, but it's pretty wild, I think. Anyway, oh, hey, this is my studio. I left this in because I wanted to show you all. I'm busy working on like 3 different things right now. I'm working on a series of paintings for an exhibit that I'm doing at the end of the summer. And so, yeah, that was my day in the studio. Anyway, Lewis Carroll had this syndrome that made things look bigger or smaller. And so people hypothesized that maybe that's why he created a story that has objects growing bigger and smaller. Like Alice, drinks things that make things bigger, blah, blah, blah. Okay, back to the painting, doing some yellow here. Now, I promised, again, yellow is very transparent. You can see this. I've added a little white to it, but I'm going to have to do this detail around the edge of the chair a few times to get it more opaque. I am going to apologize because my last video was off the rails. I was so giddy and excited about going to New York, and I rewatched it last night, and I couldn't even make it through it. I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh my God, I was bananas. But that's okay. I had a fantastic time in New York. And it was so much fun. Thank you so much, Gina. I'm still like beaming from the incredible time I had. But I am also coming down from it. Like I really miss Gina. I miss New York. I loved it there so much. Okay, so back to the painting. We're doing a little bit of highlights here. This color is very close to sort of a gold, and it has this really nice gold feeling to it. Really warm yellow, putting this detail on the edge of the chair. And now I'm mixing in a little bit of white to this to add, oh no, I'm making her, this is Alice. I'm making Alice's little head, her little, and I'm getting better at her skin tone. I realize that both Alice and Cinderella have a far pinker skin tone than I typically mix. I sometimes mix it more yellow, but I'm now remembering, oh yes, it's very pink. Like my skin, I've got like super pinky undertones in my skin. So here we go. And you can see, again, this is like one coat of, I think I do 3 or 4 coats of this to get it nice and opaque. And, white is tough. It doesn't seem to matter what kind of white I use. It all tends to go on a little rough, harder to get it really smooth. And so I don't know. I think it's just making sure that you're really mixing the water in with that white pigment. And it's not as smooth as some of the other colors. All pigments behave differently. And now I'm creating a very light yellow. There's lots of white in there too, with primary yellow to make her hair, her blonde hair. Originally, Alice in the original book was a brunette, but Disney, actually, Mary Blair is the one that did the art direction for Alice's hair, her dress, the whole look. The only thing that they changed besides the hair color was the fact that Alice in the original had striped stockings, but they left that out because that was a bit harder to animate over and over with her moving around so much. The other thing that they changed was originally Disney had bought the rights to all of the illustrations that were, what was the guy's name? The illustrator was Tennyson, Lord something, John Tennyson. Anyway, I'll put it in the description below. But his illustrations were bought by Disney, but the animators realized very quickly that they wouldn't be able to do that style of all the cross-hatching. It was way too much work for the animation and much too dark. So they dropped that. But I'll get back to that later in this piece because you'll see Mary actually put in some of that hatching in this concept piece. And so I think she was trying to emulate a little bit the original illustrations. But going back to the job at hand here, which is mixing up a green now. So I've got, what have I got there? Looks like cyan and some yellow. So starting to make these little teapots. These were really fun to do. Okay, I wanted to also mention that I need to remind myself every time to mention that I am teaching Zoom courses this summer. And these are going to be really fun. I have a few people signed up. So far, everyone who's signed up, I can tell you right now, this is going to be a great class, a really good group of people in both sessions, actually. So I have 2 different sessions I'm teaching. One starts on June 1st, and it's Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock a.m. my time, which is Pacific Standard Time here on the West Coast. And it starts at 10, goes till 12, and it runs for 6 weeks. And then the second round of classes starts a few weeks later, and it's on Sunday nights from 7 to 10 p.m. So hopefully you can join us. And the link is in the description below. I'm going to try to figure out how to put a link here on the video too. And it's not very expensive. It's pretty cheap. So check it out. All right. Back to the painting. How many times do I say that per video? Because I get sidetracked. I live alone, and I'm alone a lot of the time. So when I do talk, I talk a lot. Actually, I talk a lot no matter what my living situation. Doing a couple coats of these little teapots. It's so incredible to me how much things change as gouache dries, and as you get that second, third coat on, things look so good, and it really tightens everything up, that second or third coat, and then things become opaque and so vibrant. It's really cool. It turns out, speaking of bright and vibrant and these this sort of trippy concept art that Mary Blair did, so originally Disney really wanted her to work on this movie because he had been so disenchanted by the concept work that was done for Bambi. He thought it was all very dark and sort of somber, and he wanted this movie to really reflect the surrealist narrative and aesthetic that's in the book. And so when this film first came out, because a lot of it really stuck to Mary Blair's vision, her strange color palettes and her more abstracted forms and whatnot, but when it first came out in theaters in 1951, it bombed in the box office, and it was panned by literary critics who accused Disney of Americanizing a British classic, and people didn't really get the aesthetic. But then years later it was re-released in the 1960s, and of course it gained popularity with the counterculture because of the sort of curiously psychedelic and Dali-esque surrealist elements, right? Like the whole thing is just it's like a fever dream. It's so cool though. And a lot of that, thanks to Mary Blair. And look at these, look at the shapes. I love that she, you can sense that Mary had really great taste. Like at the time she was, young and stylish, and a lot of the shapes that she uses reflect what was happening in, interior design, especially Italian interior design, and just the shapes that she's borrowing from are really evident in this piece. Like this little teapot that I'm working on right now, and it has this fantastic top to it, and then this sort of strange kind of bulbous shape at the bottom here, and the spouts are all really curvy and groovy. I don't know. Groovy wasn't a word in the 50s. It wasn't groovy yet, but it became groovy, right? Okay. I'm just going to mention again the fact of the double coats. So when you put a first coat down, especially of white, things are going to look rough. You're going to see your brush strokes. Don't overdo it. Don't try to smooth those strokes, because if you go back and forth trying to smooth those out, then you risk picking up some of that paint and creating a rougher application. So if you just trust it, just put down the coat as quickly as possible with as few brush strokes as possible. And then you always, you do a second or third coat, and that's when things get cleaned up. So here you can see I've skipped ahead to show you what it looks like after it has 2 coats, I believe. I've only done 2 at this point. But you just trust that process, because it will look streaky at first, but it's better to have a streaky first coat than it is to have a lumpy first coat. And you will get lumps if you try to keep smoothing it out. Trust me. Okay, so we're doing up a bit of a brighter mixture. You can see here that this is a warm green. It's right between the yellow and the true green. So this is a yellowy green. So I'm using the cyan. So earlier, the first little teacup that I did, or the first little pot that I did, way over on the left side of the composition, that was actually made mixing ultramarine blue, which is a warm blue, and yellow. So that gave me a different yellow. This yellow is far more of a warm yellow, or a warm green, because it is the cyan blue mixed with yellow. Okay, so I don't want to keep repeating myself, but I will say it just one more time, just because I don't know how clear I was, but I do this a lot. The ultramarine and yellow mixed together creates the green that you see way on the other side of the composition. And then when you mix yellow with cyan, you get this warmer green. Yeah, that's right. Mixing together primary yellow, a tiny little hint of true red with lots of white, getting that really lovely warm yellow. And we're going to do another little teapot here. Yay. Also, what else can I say? Oh, I did find out that this, that Disney originally wanted to make this part live action, part animation. So sort of like Mary Poppins, like have a hybrid of live action animation. And Ginger Rogers, he wanted her to be in it originally. So it's fascinating to me how things morph and change depending on, the situation. Like he actually wanted to make Alice in Wonderland before he even did Snow White. But luckily that didn't happen because Snow White, Alice ended up bombing and it wouldn't have, Mary Blair probably wouldn't have worked on it had it been before Snow White. And so, yeah, it all worked out for the best. Look at this. I'm doing a little dance. What's going on? Oh, walking. Okay, I'm waiting for things to dry. So I should put in some dancing music there. So dumb. I was really stoked about my nails. They were really fun because look at this. I'm like disco dancing, which, by the way, I went out dancing on Saturday night and it was so fun. I was out until 3 a.m. dancing. And yeah, the DJ from the 90s back in my rave days came to Vancouver and ended the night with some amazing disco. I had a fantastic time. Oh, this is the best part. Her little face. I really enjoyed painting her face. It turned out great. So these cheeks, so quite a watered down peachy pink color. And then what I do is I dried off my brush slightly and then I kind of mix it by, as you can see, I'm sort of blending the edges of her cheeks a little tiny bit. And then we're getting the pure red to give her tiny, perfect little lips, her little heart-shaped mouth. Little kiss. Mwah. So perfect. Nice. Okay, using the very tippity tip of this new brush, my Princeton number 6 watercolor brush, which I am really enjoying. It's no Windsor Series 7, but it's close. It'll do. And yeah, just making her eyebrow color here. So again, brown, you just basically mix whatever's on your palette. In this case, some green, some orange, a little bit of this, a little bit of that to make her teeny tiny eyebrows. And then we're going to use a bit of white to do her eyeballs or her irises. What's the whites of the eye called? Jeez, Louise, I don't know. I can't even use that it's early as an excuse because I slept in today quite a bit. I'm getting back to regular time here. And now creating this pink for the teapot over on the edge here. And this pink is the wrong pink. I made it a little bit too orange and not blue enough. But I fixed that because I will not tolerate the wrong pink. It has to be the right pink because Mary knew what she was doing when it came to color. Just creating such beautiful harmony. It makes a difference doing a cool pink over a warm pink. So see the cool pink, ooh, it just seems to pop. It just does. It pops more than that warm pink did. And that's probably because the green behind it is warm, right? So doing a cool pink over top of a warm green, and they're complementary colors, it makes sense. And now just a little bit of detail of her eyes here. I think that turned out pretty good. I'm steady. My hands are so steady these days. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. I'm like, I'm getting all hypnotized by watching myself paint. That reminds me. That just reminded me of Conan the Barbarian, what's it called? When the director, or what, it wasn't even the director, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger does in the extras for Conan, he does the commentary and it's so cute. There's one point where he's like, I'm hypnotized. I can't do a good Arnold. Anyway, here we go with the smoke, or not the smoke, the steam. Ooh, the steam. Look at it. Gorgeous steam. I have to say, man, I am so proud of my swooshes and my swooshy brush strokes these days. Just so much more confidence. And whoa, hot damn, that was a good one. Yeah, I'm following the concept art for the most part, but kind of went on my own little tangent there. So much fun. And then brightening up the color that I just used so that I can get some highlights in there. I love that she did this. So you can see this in her pieces. Parts of the steam are lighter so that it really feels like it's moving in space, like it's catching the light. It's just brilliant. Same with the chair. The chair has these sort of brighter yellow areas. And so the whole thing feels like it's moving, it's shining, it's reflecting light, or it's, you know, it's playing in within the space. It's just gorgeous. And there we go. Almost done. The last detail of this piece was a lot of fun to do. It is challenging though, and it's putting black ink over top of the gouache. So I'm about to use a fine liner, black pen, black waterproof ink pen. And I'm using, I believe it's a 0.1. It's very, very thin. And first just putting these darker details. So just a little swoosh here and there to give depth. You can just see I'm adding a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of black to that green. Yeah, just darkening up these details here. But when I get into the pen work, what I wanted to say is it's a good idea to have 2 of these pens on hand, because what'll happen is one, as you draw over top of the gouache, one will get a little dried up. I mean, it's very difficult. I'm just testing the pen there to see that it's working, and I'm ready to go. So doing this hatching, now I am not one for hatching. I truly believe it's such a skill. Like, it's something you really need to practice and hone in order for it to look correct. It needs to feel correct, right? It needs to feel like it's following the curve of an object, and if you do it very arbitrarily, it can look kind of crappy. But in this piece, it's pretty simple. It was pretty straightforward, so I go for it, and a lot of fun to do. It's pretty loose. It's not perfect, and that suited me fine because I'm not much of a hatcher. But this brings me back to the original illustrations done by Tennyson, that there's so much cross hatching in those original pieces. So I think Mary was bringing in that for this concept art as sort of a nod to the original illustrations. But all of these details were disregarded in the final animation. And there we go. Yay, all done. So I get to take the tape off, my washi tape, which does not stick to the paper. Love it. Well, it sticks until you want to take it off. And there we are all done. I hope you enjoyed this one. I'm so thankful that you're all watching. If you watch to the end, if you have any artists you want to see me replicate, let me know, and I'll see what I can do. Thanks so much, everyone. Go watch Alice in Wonderland and have a psychedelic day.